We're in Genesis chapter 43 tonight, Genesis chapter 43. Just to refresh our memories, Joseph had just, when we had ended chapter 42, Joseph's brothers had come to Egypt, where Joseph had been put in charge of pretty much the whole country. Pharaoh put him as his right-hand man, so he could go on just enjoying his day, and Joseph took care of the country for him, and so everybody had to listen to him. Well, everything came true that Joseph said. There was the famine, so they had the stored grain. It was Joseph's idea. So when the famine had hit in Canaan, Joseph's brothers came to Egypt to find food, and lo and behold, who did they find? They found Joseph, but they didn't know it quite yet. So he put them through the first test of 3, and hopefully we'll get through the second test tonight. I don't know, depends on how much I decide to talk, but the first test they passed, and it was a test of, and I had a word for it, and I can't think of the word. The second test is a test of jealousy, and third test is a test of charity. But the first test was a test of sincerity. That's what it is, of sincerity. Just see if they would tell the truth. Joseph knew their story because he knew who they were. They didn't recognize him, so he was just kind of curious, asking questions. So first he accused them of being spies, and no, we're not spies. We come from, we're hungry. He tells the whole story. I'm not going to go through it, but talks about his brother at home. We left the oldest brother at home, and so he tells you. He says, "Okay, look, I'm going to send. I'm going to leave a prisoner, and y'all go back, bring that brother to me." Now, this was a test because Joseph knew how his brothers had treated him. So he was curious. Since I've been gone for 20 years, 21 years, however long it's been, I wonder how they're treating the next guy in line, the next oldest son. Are they treating him? Is he even still, are they lying to me? Have they sold him? Has he met the same fate I have? That's what's going through Joseph's mind at this point. They want to know how his brothers have treated him since they treated Joseph so badly and sold him into slavery. So at the end of the last chapter, it said that Jacob said, let's see, back up, when they had bought the grain from Joseph, he had their money placed back in the mouths of their sacks, and they didn't realize it till they were already back, and then they got scared because they thought they had accidentally stolen money. They thought there was some kind of mix-up, and they thought they got free grain, and they thought, oh no, we're really doomed now because here we went to buy grain from the pretty much the head of Egypt, and we had to prove to him we weren't spies, and then all of a sudden we've stolen from him. So they're really scared, And so then we go into 43. It says, now the famine was still severe in the land, so when they had eaten all the grain they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, go back and buy us a little more food. But Judah said to him, the man wanted us solemnly. Warned us solemnly, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother along with us, we will go down and buy food for you. But if you will not send him, we will not go down, because the man said to us, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. Israel asked, why did you bring this trouble on me by telling the man you had another brother? Okay, I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to correct good old Israel, because what did he say? Why did you bring this trouble on me by telling him you had another brother? What's he saying to them? Why didn't you lie to them? All you had to do is lie. You didn't have to tell them you had another brother.
Well, but sometimes you don't have to tell everything you know.
Okay,
That's exactly right.
but that's not my point. I'm actually getting to my real point. That's just a piece of my point. My point is, Jacob did this. What? I mean, he is the one that essentially got this ball rolling. How? By showing favoritism to Joseph. Excessive favoritism, by giving him the coat, by treating him like royalty and making his other brothers work. And then whenever the final straw was whenever he's like, go spy on them and tell me what's going on. So, I mean, his brothers, I'm not justifying them selling in slavery, but, that.
It was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, what he was having Joseph, go watch him.
He put him on the chopping block.
He did. He really did. He by showing him so much favoritism, he almost forced these boys or men into selling them into slavery. I mean, he kind of brought it on himself. So
you can kind of see the point of the brothers, because he's been shown favoritism all his life. I mean, he's been given everything over them because Jacob loved their mother more than he loved all the rest of them.
Right.
And then on top of that, he has these dreams. It says, well, you're going to worship me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I don't think so.
Right.
So you can kind of see this all working together, all seething and all working itself into a turmoil, and then all of a sudden they just blew up.
Right. And like I said, Jacob, he kind of one that got it all
on himself.
brought it on himself, but then he turns around and blames them and says, why did you bring this trouble on me? He's the one that brought the trouble on himself by showing favoritism to Joseph. I mean, he really did. So, not only is he telling them, hey, you should have lied, tell them something they shouldn't do, you're supposed to tell your kids, tell the truth. So he's saying you should have lied. Not only is he telling you you should have lied, but he's like, you brought this trouble on me. No.
Well, they've been living with a lie for however many
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
So they just decided they didn't need another one. We tried that once, it didn't work out too well.
Right. So anyway, he asked him, why'd you bring this trouble by telling the man you had another brother? They replied, the man questioned us so closely about ourselves and our family. Is your father still living? He asked us. Do you have another brother? We simply answered his questions. How were we to know he would say, bring your brother down here? Okay, that should have been the first red flag right there that was Joseph. And I'm going to point out these red flags throughout this chapter because there's a few of them. And that should have been the first red flag because this is supposedly a man they've never met before. And if you just go meet somebody, you're going to buy grain from somebody, you've never met them, and then they say, is your dad still alive? You have another brother? I mean, there's 11 of them. Why would you ask that? Is there, there's 12 of you? So, what, he seemed to know too much already just by the questions he was asking. But then in verse 8 says, Then Judah said to Israel, his father, send the boy along with me, and we will go at once, so that we and you and our children may live and not die. I myself will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him if I do not bring him back to you and set him here before you. I will bear the blame before you all my life. As it is, if we had not delayed, we could have gone back, or we could have gone and returned twice. So not only is he saying, okay, look, I'll take responsibility. If something happens to him, take it out on me. I'll take the blame, full blame. But you notice what he said? As it is, if we had not delayed, remember last week, beginning of the chapter, they're just sitting around, there's this famine, and they're just sitting around going, whoa, what do we do? We're just hungry. What do we do? They're just not doing anything about it. Finally, they decide, well, let's go to Egypt and get food. So they had delayed too long anyway before they went to get the first round of food. So, Judah's telling him, he's like, we've already waited too much. So here's the deal, Dad. If we stay, we're gonna die. We're out of food. We're all gonna die if we stay. If we go back, we may die, but we may live. So that's our only hope. Yes, it's scary. Yes, we're scared that this man is going to punish us for stealing money. They weren't telling his dad this at this point, but yes, they were scared that God was punishing it for selling his brother and then lying, saying he was dead. So, they were scared, but that was their only hope of life, was to go back. So finally, you got a little sense in him. Then their father Israel said to him, if it must be, then do this. Put some of the best products of the land in your bags and take them down to the man as a gift, a little balm and a little honey, some spices and myrrh, some pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double the amount of silver with you, for you must return the silver that was put back into the mouths of your sacks. Perhaps it was a mistake. Take your brother also and go back to the man at once, and may God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he will let your older brother and Benjamin come back with you. As for me, I am bereaved, I am bereaved. So he's sending a little bribe with, the famine apparently had not struck exactly everything because, they had honey and they had spices and pistachio nuts, almonds. They did have some stuff, but they really needed grain. So, he said, take all this stuff, give it to him gift, take the brother too, take the money that was returned and the money to buy some more grain, take all that. So verse 15, so the men took the gifts and doubled the amount of silver, and Benjamin also. They hurried down to Egypt. I think that's funny, they hurried down to Egypt. It's like a 6-week trip. How do you hurry on a 6-week trip?
Get there in 6 weeks instead of 7.
So, it's like in today's, time you brag, it was supposed to drag me an hour and I made it 45 minutes. So you get there and like, hey, it's supposed to take me 6 weeks and I did it in 5.5. I guess that was hurrying for them, but anyhow, when I looked up, I lose my place, I found it. So they hurried down to Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, because he also, remember, Pharaoh had a cupbearer and a chief butler. The chief butler would be the steward. He would be the one that would pretty much Joseph's assistant. And he says, take these men to my house, slaughter an animal, and prepare a meal. They are to eat with me at noon. So he's like, I want a lunch date with them at noon, my house.
Flag.
Red flag, right there. For one, they were scared to go to his house because they still think we're in trouble with this guy. He's going to take us to his house and then he's going to kill us. What's he going to do? But
he still thinks we're spies.
Yeah. But here's the thing about this time. Inviting somebody to your house isn't like us inviting somebody to our house for a meal. When you invited, especially a foreigner, into your house this time, especially to stay, if they stayed overnight or stayed for a very long period of time, you are actually telling that person, you are under my protection. You're staying in my house. If somebody comes after you, my family, my household will fight to the death for you. we will protect you because this is our house. So I mean, that was something that was very important. You know, it's not like a quick phone call, hey, you wanna come over for supper? Sure. You know, if somebody is over at my house visiting for supper and somebody comes to the door, says, where's so-and-so, I'm gonna kill them and be like, right there. If I don't have a dog in the fight, I'm not fighting. So, but they did, so, that was just their ways, but the man did as Joseph told him and took the men to Joseph's house. Now, the men were frightened when they were taken to his house. They thought, we were brought here because of the silver that was put in our sacks the first time, put back in our sacks the first time. He wants to attack us and overpower us and seize us as slaves and take our donkeys. So they automatically just go to the worst case scenario. You ever do that? I do. My brain always goes worst case scenario on everything because
It's called anxiety.
it's called anxiety. And right now they were extremely eat up with anxiety because this was a long time period to wait to wonder what's going to happen. I mean, we're talking a 6-week trip back and then a 6-week trip back, all knowing we've got money that don't belong to us. What's going to happen? You know, the guy already seemed to not like us, and then all of a sudden we've stolen from him. So, verse 19, so they went up to Joseph's steward and spoke to him at the entrance to the house. We beg your pardon, our lord, they said. We came down here the first time to buy food, but at the place where we stopped for the night, we opened our sacks, and each one of us found his silver, the exact weight in the mouth of his sack. So we have brought it back with us. We have also brought additional silver with us to buy food. We don't know who put our silver in our sacks. Verse 23, it's all right, he said. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's good. It's all right, he says. Don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks. I received your silver. Then he brought Simeon out to them. Now I want to plant a thought right here in your head. I think that Joseph has been evangelizing to the Egyptians while he's there. And the reason I think that is because they worship many gods. And whenever the steward made the comment, your God, the God of your father, they were very aware of God, the one and only God. Now, that doesn't mean they believed there was a one and only God, but they knew. They knew about this God. And so I believe Joseph was evangelizing to him while he was there. You know, he was put in a high position. He was put in a position where he could speak, I guess, freely to anyone he wanted to, because, you know, some higher positions, you know, you can't just go, you know, the president can't just walk down the street and just talk to anybody because, well, frankly, you'd probably get shot. But, and that's not, I'm not saying that about our current president. I'm saying any president would. That's why they have Secret Service.
I was thinking, yeah, Joe would.
I'm just trying to censor myself a little bit because Facebook. But
Yeah, but by Joseph answering everybody's dreams and then telling them his God is what interpreted the dream, I think they realized then that there is a God, and a real God.
yeah. And, well, I was going to say a thought, but I'm going to save it for a little bit. Then he brought Simeon out to them. Verse 24, the steward took the men into Joseph's house, gave them water to wash their feet, and provided fodder for their donkeys. They prepared their gifts for Joseph's arrival at noon because they had heard that they were going to eat there. When Joseph came home, they presented to him the gifts they had brought into the house, and they bowed down before him to the ground. He asked them how they were. Then he said, how is your aged father you told me about? Is he still living?
That's another red flag.
So he's like, how is the old man? Yeah, another red flag, cause
I
he's
mean, as
curious.
many people as come through every day wanting grain.
Right,
that
so
he
not
would
only for him to remember their story, but also to seem concerned, concerned enough to say, you know, how's he doing? Because most people, you know, wouldn't even ask. I mean, you know, you might, if you work at a convenience store, you see people come and go all day, and you might have somebody, you know, mention, yeah, I got old, my dad, he's old. And then you might see him 6 weeks later and, you know, be like, so how's that old dad you got? Is he still living? You know, you're not gonna just say that unless you have personal interest in this.
Everywhere we go, somebody asks about Joseph's parents for those, cause he knows everybody in town.
We're talking about Joseph's dad right now. What page am I on?
28.
No, I'm on page 63. I said page, not
Verse
verse.
28.
They replied, your servant, our father, is still alive and well. And they bowed down, prostrating themselves before him. As he looked about and saw his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, he asked, is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about? And he said, God be gracious to you, my son. Deeply moved at the sight of his brother, Joseph hurried out and looked for a place to weep. He went into his private room and wept there. He was so happy. Now remember, Benjamin was one of them that was there when he was sold in slavery, wasn't he? No, he was the one that was not there. But
He hadn't
the,
been born yet, had he?
the
Yeah, he was a little boy. He
the point I was going to bring up earlier, it's irrelevant with Benjamin, but the point I was going to bring up earlier, I'm going to bring up now, is this is a story about love. I mean, it really is. This story of teaching us how we should love, because, you know, we're supposed to love everyone. Love everyone. No matter what they do to us, we are supposed to love them. God tells us to. We're to love. People that are lovely are easy to love. It's the ones that are full of anger, full of malice, full of, you know, hatred. You know, those are the people that are very hard to love. And when your own brothers sell you into slavery, how hard is it to love them?
And forgiveness too, not just love, but
Right.
forgiveness.
And not only that, and we're not even to there yet, but he had actually asked God to make him forget the emotional pain he went through. He actually chose to forget the emotional pain that he had went through in order for him to be able to properly love his brothers and not let that cause any friction in between them. And, you know, for him to go through what he did, because it wasn't just the fact that he was sold in slavery. I mean, he was put in prison for something he didn't even do after that. So he had a pretty rough go of things, but he was doing well right now. But he never really just took it out on his brothers. Now, he was toying with them here some, and but these tests were just to see if they changed or not. He wanted to know. He hadn't seen them in 20 years, something. So he wanted to know, you know, have they changed? Or are they still the same old guys they were when they sold me? So he's putting them through these tests.
31.
Yeah, he wept there. 31, after he had washed his face, he came out and controlling himself, said, serve the food. They served him by himself, the brothers by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because Egyptians could not eat with Hebrews, for that is detestable to Egyptians. So, red flag. If Joseph was an Egyptian, there was about a 99.9% chance he would never have told a Hebrew to go to his house and eat. Because that was detestable. You didn't do that. And the reason that was, and this is not, I have no proof of this, this is a very widely believed theory among Bible scholars, that, and it may have been right before this particular Pharaoh, which we're not even 100% sure which Pharaoh this was. They got narrowed down to a couple, but I mean, there were 30 dynasties in Egypt, and each dynasty, I mean, there was 3,000 years of pharaohs. So I mean, you know, but there was a time period where there was some nomads that had taken over Egypt, and they had their own dynasty. They were one of the Egyptian dynasties, and I'm not sure how long that dynasty lasts. I'm not sure how many years it's passed down or whatever. But these were they were nomad, and nomad is just somebody who wanders. Jacob was nomad. It doesn't say it in the Bible. It never mentions people being. The Bible mentions people as being sojourners. They're pretty much the same thing. You look at the definition of a sojourner, and it's somebody who doesn't have a place to call home, somebody who wanders, which the Bible calls us sojourners because we're here on earth. This is our temporary home. We can't make a permanent home here because our permanent home's in heaven. But, and a nomad was pretty much the same thing. They just traveled around. They didn't just stay put in one place. They didn't have a home. And most of them were shepherds. So the Egyptians, they despised shepherds. They didn't like them. And then here he's inviting all these shepherds into his house. So that should have been a big red flag right there to these brothers that, hey, something's up. We've stolen from this guy. He's brought us into his house and he's feeding us, and he's not even really supposed to be eating with us. He's not even supposed to like us. So, they're really confused by this point, I'm sure. They're scared, confused, happy all at the same time, and they're going to get happy here in this chapter. Of course, that's going to go out the window in the next one, but when they go through the third test. But anyway, the men. Okay, verse 33. The men had been seated before him in the order of their ages, from firstborn to the youngest, and they looked at each other in astonishment. Red flag. Now, how did Joseph know what order they were born? These weren't kids where you could say, oh, well, I can tell by their height. No, these were grown men. Some of them were very close in age, probably, because there's 4 wives, so some of them were probably the exact same age. So the only people that would know to seat them was Joseph. I mean, it's somebody that would know the family personally.
Private investigator or a computer program, you might could figure it out.
But they didn't, at this time, they didn't have Wi-Fi in Egypt.
That was the next year that they got it.
Yeah. I think it was after the Israelites went into the wilderness that Egypt got Wi-Fi. Many, many years later. So yeah, that should have been. It wasn't just the fact that he said, if we went to somebody's house and they set us down, and we happened to be in the order we were born, and be like, that's kind of odd. But birthright was a big thing to them, and birth order was a big thing to them. So I mean, that was something that was on their mind more than it is on our minds today. So that was very important that he knew their birth order and seated them in their birth order. So they're looking at each other like, wow. And they've still not figured it out. They've still not been like, wait, this is our brother, you know? But they didn't recognize him. He had shaved, you know, they wouldn't expect that. And that's one reason that Bible scholars argue over which time period or which of the dynasties Joseph actually served under, because there was a particular dynasty, I forget the name of it. Some Bible scholars say that he was there during that time, but they didn't believe in the clean-shaven body like most of the pharaohs did. And we know that Joseph had to, because it tells before he went, he shaved and washed before he went before the pharaoh. So, you know, that's why his brothers didn't recognize him, because he was clean-shaven.
Even if they had thought he looked like their brother, they would have never guessed it, because
They sold him as a slave, and then here he is.
From a slave to the second highest in the kingdom.
Well, he also went from just being born a baby to being the favorite of the family, so, you know.
But that's different, going from a slave to the second in the kingdom.
But not to mention all the Egyptian garb he has on too, though, that'd be hard to recognize, especially when they use a lot of makeup and making their own prosthetics as far as with the fake goatee and stuff like that.
Right.
It'd be like somebody who should be in jail but runs for president and becomes president of the United States. Wait a minute,
Does that sound familiar?
that may have happened.
So we will get through this chapter. Okay, so,
What do you tell about Benjamin?
yeah, we gotta talk about, Benjamin Eden, or Benji. So they we didn't see it in this notice, okay, verse 34. When portions were served to them from Joseph's table, Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anyone else's. So they feasted and drank freely with him. Now, there's a couple things to mention here. For one, and I don't know the exact portion size, but there was actually a set portion size for different ranks. If, like, more important people got double portion. If you were, you know, so high, you got 3 times the portion. But the highest you could get was 4 times the portion. Well, he gave Benjamin 5 times the portion. So they're like, he got 5 times the portion.
About
Well-
what age do you think Benjamin was even? He wasn't a little child, was he? I mean,
No,
They were young men.
They were all grown
Young
men.
men.
This had been 21 years after they'd sold him in slavery,
Okay.
before they ever came to Egypt the first time.
Yeah,
He wasn't born yet when they.
Yeah, he was born.
Yeah, he was born.
He was
But he was just, he was
born
little.
Before the brothers took,
Yeah.
Joseph off.
Yeah,
If
He
he
was
was,
just a little
oh,
boy.
Joseph
Just a
remembered
small
him.
child.
oh, he did, okay, I was thinking maybe he was born later. I guess.
And that's the
no,
other
cause
thing.
he was the only other one that was born from Rachel.
Yes,
And Rachel had already passed away before all this.
well, I still didn't know what age he'd be, so he was a young man, well enough to eat those 5 portions, I guess.
I
He's been a
can,
big guy.
I guarantee you 21, if he had been a newborn when Joseph left, he'd been 21 at a minimum. I guarantee you a 21-year-old can eat 5 times the amount of other people. I know, I've got a 20-year-old living in my house, and I was 20 once.
It's a good thing those boys didn't take their wives with them. Because wives tend to get upset if a waitress gives preference to her husband. I remember
Just
30
you're
years
right.
ago,
Don't have time for this story.
no, this is good.
No, it's
30
not.
years ago, we were in a fish house, and the waitress gave me a big old slice of onion, which I didn't particularly want, and didn't give Annette any onion, which she doesn't want raw onion. She doesn't like raw onion. But she fussed and fussed because that waitress gave me onion and not her, even though she didn't want it. That's why they didn't take their wives.
Those the onion, huh?
Wonderful.
It's just yours.
And now I'm upset because y'all didn't want the onion, because I like the onion.
It's fish.
You were probably there when you were a little kid,
I didn't like onion when I was a kid.
5, 6 years old.
30 years ago, he was 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
I said, over 30 to 40 years.
But notice something, he's given them this test. He purposely gave Benjamin 5 times the amount, and to show favoritism to him, to see how they would react. He wanted to know, how are they still jealous? That's why I said this was a test of jealousy, to see how they would react. And it says, so they feasted and drank freely with him in the chapter. Well, and it does go on, and he sends them off, but you would have thought something would have been said. Why is he at 5 times the amount? He's the youngest, typically it would have been, if anybody gets more, it should have been noticed, right? Because that's how things worked.
Mine says they drank and they got intoxicated with Joseph, so they may not have cared if they were drunk.
Maybe, yeah.
But if you're a guest in somebody's house, you're not gonna complain about it while you're there. You're gonna wait till you leave, and then you're gonna go, did you see how much he gave Benjamin?
And did you see that he sat
Really?
us all in order?
Yeah.
Now, what's that all about?
Well, they had a 6-week journey back home to talk about that, so had plenty of time to discuss it, but we don't have plenty of time. We got 5 minutes.
You would think by this time, as soon as they got out of town, they'd stop and go through all those bags,
Yeah.
see what's in them.
They might be too hungover for that, though.
Maybe they weren't the brightest candle on the candlestick.
That's the one who was Egypt.
Hang on. But
It's disgusting.
the only reason I've already read it, but I was because I was pretty sure I had read right earlier, but you made the comment, Dad, it's not even listening, and I'm talking to him.
I'm listening.
Ryan, put your phone down so Dad can listen to me. You made the comment that you would have thought they would have stopped and checked their bags,
Well, he was discussing the missions with me, actually.
which they didn't stop to check their bags. Joseph did send a servant to chase them down, and they didn't get far from the city before they knew what was going on. But anyway, that's next week because we only have 4 minutes left now. So, anybody have anything to add? Or any more questions before we close this chapter out? I had a lot more I want to say, but I don't want to keep you all night. I don't want to stay all night. So, let's close in prayer. Father God, we thank you for this opportunity to come to your house this evening and sing your praises and worship you. We thank you for the lesson you give to us through your holy word. I pray that we will take these lessons that we get. We will find a way to apply them to our lives, find a way to use them to help others, find a way to continually improve ourselves and continually draw ourselves closer to you by studying your word and by listening to your word, listening to your voice. Pray that you will go with us this week. Watch over us, guide us, protect us. Pray all these things in your son Jesus' name. Amen.
Yeah.